Turn 1, Thought Scour or Mental Note. Turn 2, cast your commander, Lazav, Wearer of Faces. Turn 3, attack with Lazav, exile the Phage the Untouchable in your graveyard to make a clue. Sack the clue to have Lazav become the Phage, and that's GG, go next, wear your opponent's faces to their mom's house and have her make you a nice lunch. Thank you for watching Element Hobbies, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Oh, right, it's Commander. There's still other players. Okay, well there is more to the deck than just that bit, and I'm gonna show you. Welcome to Element Hobbies, where our decks are anything but elementary. In this video, we're going to talk about Lazav, Wearer of Faces, how to best use it, and an absolutely wild deck list to go with it. Lazav, Wearer of Faces is a Dimir legend with a mana value of 2, 1 black and 1 blue mana. It's a shapeshifter detective that has a power and toughness of 2/3. Whenever Lazav attacks, exile target card from a graveyard, then investigate, which just means make a clue token, which is one of these. Then, whenever you sacrifice a clue, you may have Lazav become a copy of a creature card exiled with it until the end of the turn. The first ability allows Lazav to exile a card from any graveyard when it attacks. Now you don't have to exile just creatures with Lazav's trigger. You can get rid of recurring cards or like flashback cards. It's a pretty useful ability to have on just a 2 mana value creature that can attack on turn 3. For the second ability, you don't need to sacrifice a clue through the clue's own activated ability. Anything that sacrifices an artifact or another clue sacrificer will work. This allows a bit of reactive play. For example, if you get an Ocean Thief exiled with Lazav, you can hold that clue sacrifice as a threat in response to a big card draw spell. Or if you exile an Angler Turtle, you can use it on a specific player's turn to make them attack, or use it in response to a removal spell to give Lazav hexproof. The deck in this video won't go too much into that trajectory, but it is there if it piques your interest. The general play pattern for Lazav is going to be attack with Lazav, exile a giant creature card from your graveyard, make a clue, then sacrifice that clue to have Lazav become the giant creature you just exiled, dealing lots and lots of commander damage. In this deck, you're generally going to want to have Lazav become a copy of your own creatures because they are very, and this is a technical term, so feel free to Google it, big. However, a wise man once said there's always a bigger fish. So if you need to copy an opponent's creature because it's either way bigger than anything you have or it has an effect you could really use, feel free to do so. But in general, with this deck, you're going to want to target your own creatures. For me, when I first saw the Wearer of Faces, my immediate reaction was, what if I just make this dude a Leviathan and commander damage people out of the game in like 2 attacks? That sounds like a lot of fun. So here we are, using Lazav to release the Krakens, or at least Kraken-sized things. We'll be discarding or milling big boys into the graveyard, then giving Lazav evasion to get as much commander damage as we possibly can. And we might get a bit toxic. We start out crack-a-lackin' with the OG Krakens, Leviathan and Polar Kraken. Using Lazav to copy them will get you a giant trampling Lazav, without the messy upkeep or land sacrificing requirements. I know I'm old, but am I the only one excited to use Polar Kraken and Leviathan in 2024? I'm curious as to what cards my viewers wish they could find a really good deck for. Continuing the Kraken theme is Reservoir Kraken and Tromokratis, who will give Lazav trample in Ward 2, or require that the opponent block with all their creatures. You can choose to attack players with mana dorks or even like stacks pieces on creatures, and force that player to block, or that person's just gonna face 8 unblockable commander damage. Next up, we have some colossal metal monsters in Gate Colossus and Colossus of Akros. Neither of them are particularly sus, even though it's right in their name. They'll give your Lazav evasion or indestructibility. Now is a good time to point out one of the many timing nuances with Lazav. So Colossus of Akros has Defender, but if you have Lazav copy the COA after Lazav has already been declared as an attacker, then the Defender trait doesn't really do anything. So if any of your big boys have a trait that prevents them from attacking for some reason, you can always attack with Lazav, then become the creature. Phyrexian Dreadnought and Phage the Untouchable both highlight another nuance with Lazav, in that Lazav is already in play when he becomes another creature. That means you can get around difficult or pricey enter the battlefield effects, because Lazav is already in play when Lazav becomes the new card. The Ancient One and Sign of Darkness are both graveyard-filling giants. Scion can cycle itself into the bin, and the Ancient One can get you a bunch of loots. Note that you can do the previous timing trick to attack with a Lazav, then become the Ancient One without worrying about the Descend 8, as long as you switched after Lazav has already been declared as an attacker. Rounding out the Krakens in this deck are Supreme Exemplar, which is a 10/10 with flying, and Graz Unstoppable Juggernaut, which will turn all your other creatures into 5/3 Juggernauts. This can be handy when you have a bunch of support or utility creatures in play and they're not doing that much. Attack with them all, turn Lazav into Graz, which in turn turns all your other creatures into Juggernauts mid-combat. Lazav requires that you be attacking to exile cards and ultimately let Lazav wear their faces. This section of cards will give Lazav evasion, so that you can swing with impunity. Aether Tunnel, Aqueous Form, and Cloak of Mists are all auras that will prevent Lazav from being blocked. And Psychic Paper, Thieves' Tools, and Whisper Silk Cloak are all equipment that do the same. They're all pretty simple, and all highly effective. Artful Dodge and Distortion Strike are both sorceries that give you repeatable evasion. And Veil of Secrecy and Reverse the Polarity are both instant speed evasion providers, with some extra versatility. We round out the covert cards with Key to the City and Writ of Passage, both repeatable and targeted evasion. Key to the City does double duty in that you can discard your Kraken-esque cards to target later with Lazav. Now that we have Lazav cracked up and unblockable, we need to run a bit of protection for it. It's important to note that if you exile a card with Lazav, then Lazav dies and you recast it, the cards you previously exiled cannot be the target for Lazav's second ability, as a new casting of your commander counts as like a different card because of layers or state-based effects. I'm not really sure. Give me a break, will you? I mean, I had to look up the difference between card color and color identity like 4 times during the making of this video. Anyways, this small package of protection consists of Dive Down, Mizzium Skin, Shore Up, and You See a Guard Approach. These are all 1 mana value instants that can give your Lazav hexproof. Depending on your meta and how removal happy they are, you may want to include some more of these or add in some cheap counterspells. To get our Krakens into the bin, we're going to run some mill and some loot. To the uninitiated, looting is a term that references Merfolk Looter. It's any effect where you draw a card and then discard a card. We start with 2 looters that are just way better than Merfolk Looter, because Merfolk Looter was made in 1998 and that's just how power creep works. Vohar Vidalian Desecrator and Likeness Looter will both provide basic looting, with a bit of upside and value. Looter 3 is Rona Herald of Invasion, a perfectly fine looter that can turn into a respectable beater should the situation arise. Careful Study and Chart a Course are classic looting sorceries. Chart a Course has the upside of not needing to discard, but generally you will want to use it pre-combat to bin a Kraken, then attack and do the damn Lazav thing. Collector's Vault is looting with a bit of ramp included. This isn't a really high mana cost deck, but since Lazav requires you to sacrifice a clue, you'll want to make sure you have enough mana to sacrifice clue tokens while still advancing your board state. Attunement and Unfulfilled Desires are a couple of classics. Attunement will help if you need to dig deep and fast, while Unfulfilled Desires will provide continual looting for however much mana you can spare. We're going to run a few mill cards. These will be important for getting cards into your opponent's graveyard as well as your own. Hedron Crab and Ruin Crab are crabs and they'll do crabby things. With Hedron Crab you will generally target yourself and Ruin Crab will hit all your opponents. Mental Note and Thought Scour are quick little mills which can help out the shenanigans outlined in the beginning of this video. They'll also help smooth out draws since they are 1 mana cantrip spells. Merfolk Secret Keeper / Venture Deeper will mill for 4 then become a 0/4 dork. It's not very threatening, but keep in mind that the creature can later become a Juggernaut if you use Lazav to target Graz. Occasionally you will find opponents with creatures in their graveyard that you want to use. In case those get exiled or you need to recast Lazav, we run a few ways of putting those creatures back into the graveyard so they can be re-exiled. Both Cryptic Cruiser and Oracle of Dust will do that for us. You can also get a cheeky loot from Oracle of Dust, and the tap from Cryptic Cruiser may be beneficial, but I wouldn't count on it having a huge impact. Okay, so this is not an Infect deck, however, the idea of hitting someone with a Lazav copying a Leviathan and having Infect to one-shot them is just too wild to pass up. So while I don't think this is an Infect deck, I do run a few Infect cards to make sure you can actually close out the game. Glistening Oil and Phresis are both 2 mana auras that will give Infect. They are cheap enough to slam down and sacrifice a clue in the same turn, so these can be somewhat of a surprise. Glistening Oil is pretty dangerous to have on your own creature, so try to use it when you are pretty sure you're able to finish someone off with it. Tainted Strike is an instant speed infector to get the surprise KO out of nowhere. And Persuasive Interrogators are there to finish off someone with poison counters and clue sacrifices just in case Lazav can't get the job done in one shot. Also, with the rise of Interrogators and Instigators and Investigators, I think it's time to make the creature subtype Gator official. Just think of the potential crossovers with universes beyond. Just in case everything else crashes and burns, we run some classic reanimation effects. Inanimate Dead, Necromancy, and Obsessive Stitcher. However, these are emergency buttons, because you don't want a bunch of Leviathans or Polar Krakens just hanging out in play. Since we're going to be making clues and sacrificing them to turn our Lazav into Lazaviathans, we may as well throw in a few clue synergies to get more bang for our buck. Tangled Trove Kelp can be a finisher if you can't seem to get a Kraken hit with your Lazav. Just save up some of your clues and swing with a bunch of plant clues. Martha Jones will provide some more covertness when sacrificing clues. Eloise Nephilia Sleuth will get you a few extra clues, but also get you a surveil each time you sacrifice a clue, which can also help get more Leviathans in your graveyard. Last but not least is Senator Peacock, who will turn your random artifacts into clues, but more importantly, provide even more covertness. Now speaking of random artifacts, we get to the ramp section, which is pretty standard. None of these are super important to the deck, so run whatever you want, unless it's Soul Ring or Arcane Signet, in which case your Commander Daddy will be very disappointed in you. Give this video a like to please your Commander Daddy. I don't know why I put this in the script. This deck runs Dimir Signet, Felwar Stone, Bot Vessel, Mind Stone, and Talisman of Dominance. Everflowing Chalice is nice because it's a ramp for 2 mana, but you can also invest a bit more and have it produce 2 mana, which will make it easier for you to manually sacrifice your clues. Sonic Screwdriver is one of the recent efforts by Wizard to make a 3 mana ramp remotely usable, and I think it's okay here. In addition to the mana, you get some extra versatility and a bit more covertness. We run 4 covert utility lands in the Black Gate, Rogue's Passage, Escape Tunnel, and Access Tunnel. Combined with a lot of the evasion that's just added on to stuff like Sonic Screwdriver, I could see future iterations of this deck cutting a few covert cards in favor of more Krakens. I also run a Cephalid Coliseum, as it will draw you some cards and get you more opportunities to bin a Kraken. I run 12 Dimir producing lands, in no particular order are Command Tower, Tainted Isle, Drowned Catacomb, Morphic Pool, Watery Grave, Underground Sea, Shipwreck Marsh, Dimir Aqueduct, Polluted Delta, Underground River, Exotic Orchard, and Undercity Sewers. My inclination is that the Surveil lands are really bad outside of decks with lots and lots of fetch lands. I still feel obligated to do my due diligence and give it a shot, but if you're already confident that they are bad, feel free to replace it with whatever Dimir land you want. I finished the deck off with 6 swamps and 16 islands. This deck can be potentially explosive, as evidenced by the scenario in the beginning of this video. However, that won't happen all the time, and you can see a Krakening of Lazav coming from a mile away. So you want to make sure that you have some support, either protection or evasion, when you do go for a big Lazav attack. Instant speed tricks like Mental Note or an activated loot in response to the Lazav attack trigger can catch people off guard by putting creatures into the graveyard at instant speed. You have a few ways of closing out the game. In addition to commander damage, the Infect package is powerful, but don't forget about a potential Graz Juggernaut assault, where all your looters turn into Juggernauts. Or a Tangled Trove Kelpwin, where you stack a bunch of clues and then swing with a bunch of 6/6 plant clue tokens. If you're looking for another type of reanimation deck, you may want to check out this Muldrotha video where we use the companion Garuda to do some crazy things. If you're just looking for new commanders with more clue effects, check out this video on Teysa, Opulent Oligarch. Thank you for watching Element Hobbies. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I will see you around.